Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Mark Bojeun, CIO at Seward County Community College and the author of Awakening Leadership, The Journey to Conscious Influence. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, appreciate you joining us. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyber LYNX.com. And now back to our show. Mark, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Seward County Community College and your role there as CIO?
Sure. Seward County Community College, one of the fastest growing community colleges in Southwest Kansas. Great little area. We are best known for Dorothy's house just up the road. And other than that, about 150 miles from nowhere. Great little area. Some of the nicest people I've ever encountered. A little small town, but Seward County, as I say, is a fast-growing community college. And I came down here a couple of years ago to kind of turn their IT around just in time for the federal government to delete all dollars from Department of Education and put schools' budgets in critical care.
That's great. So let's explore that a little bit. So how does that work now for all of these institutions? How do you, especially a community college? I get Harvard, cool. Mm-hmm. Harvard's got a huge endowment, makes it really easy. If they actually, I don't think they've ever, wanted for funds quite some time. But a community college, whole nother story. Every dollar counts, and you're not sitting on that sort of massive pile of gold. So how do you make ends meet and keep up with the security needs in this modern time?
So twofold. One is that what happened with the elimination of the Department of Education is that federal funding went to states, and states are now dispersing federal funding. So new requirements, new areas to comply with, et cetera. However, how do we deal with it? When I got here about 2 years ago, the idea was let's try to get from 2002 technology to 2022 technology, maybe 2023. I wasn't trying to be too aggressive there. We got rid of internal capital expenditures and went to the cloud and moved an awful lot out to what we call strategic right sizing from a technical perspective. So we've made a lot of advances, increased a lot of efficiencies and effectiveness, but basically, a lot of it was around eliminating those capital expenditures, which just kill just about any department, especially when your technology is so outdated.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be tough. I mean, things like old Exchange servers. I'm sure that's things like that. That's brutal. It's
I
tough
had
to
a
manage.
switch zero that we actually traced back was originally purchased in 2002.
Wow.
Yeah, no surprise it went down.
I was going to say, and still working. That's impressive. That's
No,
hardworking geriatric piece of equipment. That's
yeah. No, we got rid of all that. So
that's great.
Up and running on a good backbone, enterprise level backbone, and with 25 gig throughput all the way across campus, and up the students' network access to 10 gig, and they're able to play their games. We have 300 students who live on site on campus. Throughput, especially anytime after 8 o'clock at night, is a critical success factor.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's interesting because you don't normally hear about community colleges with people living on campus. So is that just me, or that's relatively rare, isn't it?
Usually, a 2-year college can have. We'll have a small set of dorms for students that come from more of a distance. We have a very rural group here. A few foreign students that come in for this. We have a great basketball team and a great set of sports that go on here. So, like I say, we are growing and growing rather quickly. But yeah, most community colleges, at least in this region, do have some students
That makes
on. It's just
sense.
not the entire dorm life you would normally think of.
Sure. Well, it makes sense. I mean, in Kansas, where you're out there, people might have a heck of a commute, and
Yeah.
just it makes more sense to live on campus if you can.
We
That's
are
great.
literally 6 hours from every civilized town.
Yeah. No, that's that's tough living.
It can be. It can be.
That's great. Well, you know what? My favorite topic, or one of my favorite topics, is AI. Now, and I think when it comes to universities, 2-year colleges, I mean, just higher education in general, I think this is a really interesting topic, and I'm really curious to see what your take on this is in your thoughts on AI when it relates to cybersecurity. We know the bad guys are using AI now. This is the way I see it. It's an arms race, right? They do one thing. For years, it's been this arms race, but it's been small arms, right? And then now we've gotten to that like nuclear level where now the bad guys they're using real firepower. They're using agentic AI to be able to move very quickly and automate attacks. And it's not like it used to be in the old
Right.
days where if you were lucky and you had a good firewall and it was up to date, you were probably fine. Now it's so much more.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious, how does this play out at the community college level? What are your thoughts there? Is it one of these things? Yeah, I'm just curious. How's that work for you
Well, that's
guys?
a truly loaded question. With many, many tendrils.
Yeah.
Start with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity at any of the college level, any of the higher ed level, we've seen a 25% increase in cyber attacks. I've seen many of my colleagues be dealing with ransomware attacks at some of the larger schools. And I'm not talking about the Harvards, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about some of the state colleges and such. It the data that we hold is not inherently valuable. It is honestly the students' PII data that is compromised, used in identity attacks, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean AI is. We know it is a powerful tool. We know it is a useful tool. We know that it is increasing attacks. We shore up our defenses. But absolutely, we use AI for simulations. We use AI for doing our own internal analysis. We do use AI for scenario planning and simulation attacks on our own
That's great.
to see how our defenses hold up. We recently switched to a fantastic endpoint protection, Trend Micro, which I truly hate because I teach Python here at this college. And every time I try to compile my code, Trend Micro calls it malicious,
Yeah.
quarantines it, and disappears it, which is how it's supposed to operate. But it's annoying to me because I, want to do that. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, it really is. It's the endpoint protection that really is we're finding most useful. Denial of service attacks, things like that. They're kind of falling by the wayside as we see more compromising things. I know of one school, they had one student click on a spam link, and that sent 5,000 emails out. And then 100 people clicked on a link, and that sent 50,000 out. And within a week, they were fully compromised. And it's that kind of a thing. We actually just recently moved over to Microsoft Azure instead of AWS, primarily because of AI Ops, AI's integration into that cloud space and its ability to help us constantly reevaluate our configuration.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I think one of the things I get really excited about is you take a look at there's a couple of things like you see with CrowdStrike and Sentinel One, the way they've implemented AI in helping the cybersecurity technicians you
Hmm.
know, assess what does this mean? And so you get a quick
Right.
breakdown, like, like having kind of chat GPT right there. Very cool. It analyzes it. Awesome. Then you get vendors like Darktrace that then have things where they've been using machine learning in their products to then, instead of just like bolting on an LLM, which opens you up to all kinds of other issues, now you've got this targeted. So I think the fun part and what I get really excited about is you see things like that in, like, say, like Darktrace email, where now
Mhm.
it's AI helping secure your email for everybody in exactly the way you'd want it to, without the I'd say the risks of an LLM. And for me, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've been in a self-driving car, but it really is kind of seeing the future. Every year you see how it went from like a drunk toddler driving to like, oh, I should take over, to now
Yep.
it's like, wow, this is an adult that I don't really trust yet. But they're doing a great job. They're avoiding potholes. They're avoiding people. It's great. So I think, in that same vein, Darktrace kind of, I see the future of, cybersecurity and AI in those ways, which I think are really exciting. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out at like the in higher ed, because you guys are in this interesting spot where, like, a normal business, you've got a very clear, thing to protect, right? Your borders are
Mhm.
clearly defined. It becomes a little foggy with higher ed, because now you've got these students who you're kind of protecting them, but you don't really own their devices, but you want to protect them. They've got an email address from the university, from the college, and they've got access to some things but not other things, and so it gets really fuzzy. And I would think that that's where AI would come in real handy at some point, where it's like, I got it. This student that we don't own this device for, I get it. Let me help here. Let me secure that. This is not a student. So I think the future in those regards could be really exciting when AI can do stuff like that. But
It can, when AI advances enough, in a way with integrated into machine learning, where you do have a segmented LLM, where we actually do have the intuitive nature that we see with the full blown chat GPT.
yeah,
That's out there right now. The intuition aspects of it, the ability to derive the next step or to derive a predictable pattern, is one that really is where the true power lies. The real problem with it, though, and recently I was at a CIO conference up in Denver, and I listened to a few people, and some of the most idiotic responses I've heard was, "Oh, well, we tell everyone don't use AI. Well, don't take advantage of it." This was in the school systems, and I had to ask. I said, "Where do you draw the line of demarcation?" And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Where are you saying that's AI?" Because AI is now fully integrated into Office. It's fully integrated into Grammarly. You fully integrated into Outlook. You find it everywhere. As a matter of fact, you have to jump through hoops to decouple AI from what you're doing. And even the squiggly marks in Word, correcting your grammar, are now being enhanced and extended through AI, where it's tied into Copilot.
yeah,
Or Grammarly is reaching out for AI. Recently in my former stomping ground, the DC tri-state area, Washington DC tri-state area, the local schools there made the mistake of restricting AI, and they have been stepped on. They had false positives, false negatives. They claim this student was cheating, and the student actually has proof that they wrote the paper, and all the rest of it. It is that line of demarcation is constantly moving. It is a very, very gray area, and it presents a dilemma of how long are we going to resist this?
yeah.
One of my favorite stories, I don't know if there's a quote, but there's a favorite story, was Aristotle was furious with the invention of the written word, because he said that will create walking idiots. Um, we have to decide: are we going to embrace what is right in front of us and or are we going to resist it from a systemic protection level?
Yeah.
And sorry to babble on, but you
No.
occasionally find the folks who will say, well, AI is killing critical thinking. And the immediate response is, no, your ego is. If AI can complete your assignments, then your assignments never, ever taught critical thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. If AI is killing critical thinking, you're using AI wrong.
Yep.
Because I use it every day, all day, but not to answer a question. I have conversation, dialogue. What am I missing? What didn't I include here? What what have I not thought of? What question have I not asked? Counter my own personal egotism in that I'm right. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And AI is kind of like a 12-year-old girl. The blunt and brutal honesty that can be delivered in a very caring way, but it can hurt.
Yeah.
And when you step back, it is the best assessment that's out there. So it really comes down to are we going to resist it, or are we going to go back and rethink? Because a year after AI came out, people were saying, is this the next revolution? The last one was the Industrial Revolution. Are we at the intelligence revolution, the artificial intelligence revolution? And I have to say yes, but are you going to be the guy who's screaming after the car to go get a horse? Or are you going to start looking at maybe getting a car before, everybody else has one, and where traffic is 4 hours, to get out of town?
That's right. I think that's well said. I couldn't agree more. And I love the Aristotle reference. That was fantastic. So,
It's very true that resistance has been systemic. I mean, I've had the luxury of seeing PCs come out, the cell phones, and then the internet, and that all of that was life-changing, but is dwarfed in comparison to what AI has brought to the table.
It's really funny because this ties in so beautifully into your book, right? So where you really talk a lot about, emotional intelligence, and I'll give you a chance to talk about your book here, but just hearing how you use AI is clearly unlike people who see it as a tool and, oh, I'm going to have it answer my email. Do this task for me. Instead, you're using it as somebody who can challenge you, you can bounce ideas off of, who can help you see blind spots and help you improve. And so you're treating it kind of like a valued employee, an assistant who can actually help you with things, which isn't really interesting because I don't know if you saw the article about Microsoft when they deployed Copilot internally. They expected after a few weeks to have really high usage rates with it, but it turns out it was really bad. They had about 15-ish%, something like that, that actually adopted it and used it after 2 or 3 weeks, and they were heavy users, and then nothing for the other people. And they went and they found that the difference was the heavy users weren't using it for tasks. They were using it as they were managing it and treating it like an employee or a maybe an intern who, yeah, at first they don't know the task. How could they know the task? They don't understand the job. They've got no reference. So let me train you, teach you, show you these things, and it gets better and better with time. And those that saw it as just like a tool was like, well, it's riddled with mistakes. I'm just going to have to do it myself. Why should I even do this? Yeah, that's cute, but maybe in the future it'll be better. So until then, I'll just go back to doing the work myself. And so I really like how you can clearly see the emotional intelligence difference, in how you approach AI versus the others. And I think that's a really interesting segue into your book.
Thank you. Yeah, Awakening Leadership is written about how leadership breaks down under pressure. It's not about leaders lacking intelligence or vision, but because human systems regress when safety, regulations, or identity is threatened. When we have a failure, we all regress. It's going to happen. So, essentially, leadership isn't about being right. It's about being responsible for the conditions that other people have to work in. So what better partner do you have than AI to be evaluating how you are impacting the world around you, how you are speaking, how you are looking at things, how you're evaluating solutions, how you're taking on problems. We use AI all around to question myself, to look at it under the basic premise that it's it's not about being a motivational leader. It's about understanding how my emotional state becomes the operating system of the organization, how ownership and accountability, psychological safety determine whether teams stagnate or perform at the best. We have some mottos around here. I don't mind being wrong. I hate proving it. My team's responsibility is to keep me from proving how dumb I am. And I use AI on that on a regular basis to keep evaluating, to keep looking at it, telling me what I didn't think of. So
That's fantastic. And I think that's a really interesting, kind of perspective that as you said, that leadership is really, accepting the fact that your emotional state defines the operating system of the organization, that it influences so heavily. And I think people take that for granted. I don't even think that a lot of people realize just how impactful. And that's the case when everybody's like, well, this guy's he's an asshole and but he's like he's a great leader. Like, is he though? Just because you get results, by being, an asshole doesn't make you a good leader, even if the organization is succeeding. I don't, so I think that's, I think it's a sign of a lack of emotional intelligence to be able to understand what the people really need. I mean, do they always just need just the whip? Really, always? That's the only thing there's no carrot, there's no nuance to anything. It's just always yelling and screaming. Really?
yeah, I mean, look, one of the most undermining factors we have is fear. And fear of failure, fear of making a mistake. Innovation is killed by fear. We don't advance. So the very first premise we have to get through our minds when it comes down to leadership is it's not about being right, it's about being responsible.
That's
And
great.
if we can do that, then we look at it and we say, well, success is the team's, failure is the leaders, and that accountability buys the team the freedom to grow.
Yeah.
I was in one of my favorite stories. I was in a high profile, big client doing change management, and we made a mistake. I made a mistake. And so I called the managing director and the board together to tell them this. And we walked into the room and I said, look, I screwed up. Now, how do we fix it? And how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And one of the guys there who had been feeling very sensitive, but you screwed up. And I said, yeah, Bill, we covered that. And I realized in that moment how that just sucked all that energy out of the room. Okay. We weren't focused on making a mistake. That was a foregone conclusion. Now we're focused on how do we fix it? How do we make sure that doesn't happen a second time? And that is the power that a leader can bring to a team when they are emotionally intelligent, when they're self-aware, when they're mindful and purposeful in what they approach. In that case, they can then create a safe environment for teams to grow, for teams to take chances, for them to make mistakes. Safety is not about coddling. It's unlocking the courage to try to fail, try again. Agile says, hey, we want to fail fast. If we're not failing, we're not trying. If we're not trying, we're definitely not innovating. And if we are afraid of everything, then we're not advancing. So, around here, I walked in and said, look, it's single throat to choke. Anything wrong, it is my fault. and flat out, it is my fault at the end of the day. Whether it is that I made a decision to have somebody else do it, that I approved a direction, that I did not intervene at some place, however you want to take it on, at the end of the day, it's my fault. And in doing so, it frees the team up to really start investing in learning. Blame at the end of the day is nothing more than fear. It's not standards. With leadership, we're looking at owning the responsibility to stabilize the team much faster than control ever could.
Well, I think the key that you do, and the way you presented that, hey, I screwed up. This is what how do we, make sure this doesn't happen again, or what are we going to do to fix this and make sure it doesn't happen again kind of approach. I think the difference between that simple approach where you weren't mortified, you weren't terrified of of telling people. I think the challenge for so many people when they get into that situation is, oh, I'm so worried. I don't know if their parents were just really mean and made them, and spanked them too much when they were a kid and they're terrified of screwing up. I don't know if it's the fact that as you go through school, you're taught here are this is the information you do perfectly or you don't. And so they're used to being able to be perfect their whole lives. And then they can't deal with any mistakes. And it's like, wait, or did they just not grow up learning that nobody's perfect? In fact, in order to get good, you have to make mistakes. But I think so many people choke at that point where if they just step back and they realize, look, to err is human and that is fine. And it's how you deal with that matters. So it makes you a stronger leader when you go in and say, I screwed up. This is what we're doing about it. This is how we're going to prevent it from happening in the future. Open to ideas if you guys have some suggestions on this, but this is the situation, instead of, going in with your tail between your legs, feeling like, oh, I'm a bad guy. I screwed up. I'm no good. You're probably going to fire me. The whole world is going to hate me. Like, hold on. Right. And I think it's that emotional intelligence or lack thereof that people struggle with. And I'm not sure how they get past that. If personally, I think it's just realizing that there's an easy thing to do. It's not that hard. You don't have to feel bad about it. Is it that simple? Can people just be like, oh, I don't have to feel bad about it. To err is human. And if we're going to be successful, we got to have to fail fast and fail right.
Honestly, I'm going to tell you, it's more of a maturity, moving from being right to being responsible.
Hmm.
What I have found in my career is I've never had a client who has been upset with me saying, screwed up. Now, how do we fix it? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? What clients don't want, what people don't want to see is that hiding, that spinning. They don't spin an issue. All of that time that somebody is trying to spin an issue and minimize it because of their fears, they're not only wasting time, they're not communicating honestly with those people who are the stakeholders who are significantly impacted. Yeah. We had a major system outage. Done right. I'm going to take full accountability for it. At the end of the day, what it turned out was we blew a laser in, one of our connectors, and it blew everything from the SFPs to the fiber connections down to the firewall. Okay, it was unheard of, but it happened. But still, I'm going to take full accountability because the only thing that matters in that moment is how are we going to fix it? How do we get back up? Because that's the only thing that matters. When we spend so much time and energy spinning or trying to minimize all the rest of it, not only do we not learn, we aren't focusing on the true value, which is how do we fix it? That is the next step. And I think it was Bill Gates who said, I never learned anything from success. But in our society, honestly, I'm guilty of this as well. I'm early in my career. There's an arrogance that comes in. People believe they believe in their title. I knew a guy once who believed his title. He wasn't worth it. In IT, we check our ego and title at the door, and we come in and we talk tech. But as long as people are not self-aware, as long as they're not constantly reevaluating and seeing the impact they have on the world around them, they're posturing, and they are trying to float themselves up in their eyes. But the reality is, at the end of the day, leadership's not a mask. It's not something, it's not a uniform I put on, it's a mirror. It's how do those around you see you? What is your impact on the world around you? And recognizing no one's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. But for many years, I refused to admit I was wrong. I think my favorite used to be that I used to say, well, I was wrong once. It was 1998. I said it was going to rain, and instead it drizzled. So, yep, I have been wrong. But the reality is, we have to give that up. We have to mature with that. We have to move past it. And we do so both through mindfulness, in being present in the moment, in understanding, but also that emotional intelligence where we are aware of the social awareness of the impact we have on those around us, and how are they going to survive, and what are we really building. And when things go wrong, I put out recently I put out a new paper on the responsibility matrix, which is similar to Maslow's hierarchy, and we talk about how we can achieve these levels, but as things go wrong, we will revert. The reality, though, is as a leader reverts, their team beats them to the bottom. Okay, because as a leader reverts, the morale decreases, their impact increases. It's negative, it's harsh, and only someone who is emotionally aware is able to stop that before it falls too far. Does that make sense?
Oh, makes perfect sense. And I
I
think
mean, I like to say that arrogance is a cheap substitute for ownership.
I like that. And I agree with it. And I'm curious. I think part of this, and what I think is grossly lacking in society and a lot of people, is empathy. It's so
Mhm.
easy to demonize the other side, to not understand where somebody's coming from, be very demanding. And I think that shows a lack of emotional intelligence, to not be able to kind of understand somebody else's position. And if you're not understanding their position, how are you really leading that organization well, when you don't really understand the forces at play within the organization?
Completely agree. And contrary to the trolls out there, empathy is not a social construct. It is a reality. And it is something that it makes us stronger, not weaker, to have empathy for others. And you'll notice that no matter who bashes on that kind of an approach, who says that's not manly, or that's not who they are, or whatever it is, the minute they become a victim of something, they're asking for the empathy of others. And therefore, we can see it. But all of that ties into that mindfulness aspect. And that's something I think most people miss. Um, we teach communication. We still teach it the same way we did when I went to school for my master's, where it's sender and transmitter and receiver, and I'm going to encrypt this, and you decrypt it, and we're going to do this. And I think there was a quote at one time that said 85% of the people listen for not what is being said, but how they will respond.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you are not mindful, if you are not present in this meeting, if I'm still thinking about the idiotic conversation I had with the moron who wants to be my boss, and I'm trying to come in and talk to you about something important, I'm not here. Therefore, communication can't take place.
Yeah.
And in crisis, in leadership, whatever it is, we have to constantly be in the moment. We can't be in planning for how I'm going to spin it. We can't be in planning for, oh my God, I'm, worried about my future or whatever. We have to be present right now to be able to see what our impact is and have that empathy for those around us. That makes sense?
Perfect sense. It's funny because Jamie Dimon is kind of famous for that same idea in meetings, and he gets very he kind of not upset, but he's very clear that people shouldn't be on their phones in meetings. You need to be present. If he can be present in a meeting, he doesn't bring his phone into the meeting, then everybody should, because when you're present in that meeting and you're fully invested in that, if you can't take the 30 minutes or whatever to be fully focused on the matter at hand there, then what are you even doing there? And where have we gone wrong that the organization is so chaotic that you can't focus for that time and give it your full attention? And so I
But
totally agree with you.
I'm with you on that, but I go to the step further. It's also taking that mindful minute. I worked with a lady, a friend of mine that had come out with a book, Ruth Pierce had come out with a book on mindfulness. And I was working with somebody who just literally sounded like a second grade teacher, the very worst second grade teacher you can imagine. And I would have conversation with this person as a business analyst where I was, responsible for things. And she was condescending and speaking down to me, and it was speaking to me like I was a moron, and I would get so offended. And I called Ruth and I said, "Hey, help me out here. What can I use from a mindfulness perspective?" And she says, "Do you always carry a pen and paper with you?" Like I said, "Yeah, I still do that." She said, "Write everything that's said down, and then read it back before you react."
Hmm.
And I did that in the very first, very next meeting I had with this woman. And I didn't find any reason to respond at all because it was laughable. It was so silly. It wasn't worth the time
Yeah.
to even respond to. So yes, it is being present, but it is also taking that moment and not just reacting from that gut perspective. Real quick, I don't want to babble too long, but let me real quick story. Beautiful lady I was seeing for a while once asked me, she goes, "Well, I want to see this movie, The Notebook." And I said, "Well, I don't do chick flicks." And it was a gut reaction. And she said, "Really? How do you know?" And I said, "Well, I'm a guy. We don't do chick flicks." Um, she left it at that. She asked me to think about it. That night, I had to fly to London, and I was at Dulles Airport, and The Notebook was selling in the bookstore, so I bought it. 6-hour flight. What the heck? And I got back, and I had to tell her, I go, all right, look, Nicholas Sparks, way too flowery for me. But yeah, the book had a pretty good story. I enjoyed it. It was, and the reality was, she said, you gotta start questioning when you have a knee-jerk reaction. Was that your programming? Is that how you were raised? Is that just your male ego pride stepping in? What is driving that gut reaction? And when you can start being mindful, you can start to see how we react to stimuli all around the world, all around us without thinking, based on programming. But if we can take that second to just react, just think about it for a moment, we can react from our heads and not from some I don't know, damage in the past, if you will, of scar tissue that we don't even think about or realize is there. That's when we can start to become emotionally intelligent.
Well,
That's when we can start to wake up.
one of the things I think is really fascinating here is that your knee-jerk reaction was to call it a chick flick. And
Exactly.
then the interesting part about that is that sort of moniker is so just kind of riddled with kind of sexism and all that goes with, and it's so interesting because it's all of that goes into that programming culturally, you're socially growing up, and those things, and I think the real challenge is being able to identify, like you said, take that, being able to step back and look at it, even those little things that it's just a word, but these words have such meaning and they tie into so much stuff. And one of the biggest things I think we're still not even really, kind of working on as Americans, I'd say, as maybe, culturally, is that of kind of equality. There's so much, in our vocabulary that is kind of sexist and we don't even
Mhm.
think about it. And I think taking, like you said, being mindful of that and taking the time and looking at that and be like, wow, it's really fascinating. And it's like an onion. And we're not even on the first, we're like the first layer of this onion. We're still on that papery part of the onion. We're nowhere close to the center of it as a country.
1000%. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I use the phrase, I use
Mhm.
the phrase specifically because it did come from my upbringing. It came from how I was raised. It came from the father saying, "Oh, are you going to cry like a little girl?"
Yep.
It be a man, walk it off, rub some dirt in it, all of those types of things. But it wasn't who I was. It's not who I've evolved to be. So why was I reacting that way with that kind of that kind of uh, uh, a word, that kind of a label, that kind of a stigma
Yeah.
on it, and deriding it in that way? Um, why was I doing that when I'm a relatively well thought individual who will spend time considering? Yet I was having those knee jerk reactions. But like I say, if we are just moving to that next minute, if we are just focused on then if I was focused on that trip and not in that moment, I would have missed that one opportunity. And I don't care what anyone says about woke or whatever else. I'm not woke. I am waking up. I
Yeah.
am starting to see, and that's what my book is about. That's when I call it awakening leadership. The whole concept is you can be the best out there. You can be the on the spectrum super highest. You can have the greatest mind. You can all the rest of it. But if you're not emotionally mature, if you're not taking the time to understand your impact on people around you, you're not ever going to be an effective leader. It's not, and that's not even moral claim. That is systems reality.
Yeah.
If I come in and scream at my team, they are going to stop talking. And when they stop talking, that's when I miss the most valuable part of working in a team is input.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I couldn't agree more. And I think part of the challenge that we have a large portion of the population that is still um caveman like in their emotional intelligence, and it doesn't help when you see bad leadership on a national level, and then it's like, well, look, and it really excites and empowers and gives people the wrong impression that works, that's good, and it brings out the worst in people, and it sets us back further as a society, as in leadership and all kinds of things, where you'd think it'd be like, oh, this too shall pass, and in a few years there'll be new leaders. That's fine, and no matter where you stand on the political spectrum, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm really referring to really bad leadership that does not have, it clearly isn't using any sort of level of emotional intelligence in how they're leading, when you're making uh, just crazy decisions when it comes to defense. That is, I was an old army guy, so I feel like I get I have a leg to stand on here. That is not, first of all, you wouldn't take it. I don't understand, again, old army guy, and I know that so many other feel the same way, but National Guard leading active duty is a crazy idea. But when it's more like a platoon leader, leading the entire Department of Defense in an emotionally unintelligent way, that's the thing that I think is really shocking. And so I think the downside is, from a leadership perspective, it's a huge step back. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, with the next administration, with the next leadership at the DoD, to see the impact that has. It'll be really interesting, because I think we went from a lot of kind of emotional intelligence at the leadership level for a really for decades, where they were trying to do the right thing. The military is a big ship that doesn't turn fast, and there was a lot of progress made in a lot of directions. And to see this drastic shift, it'll be interesting to see what happens after, from a leadership perspective, and what effect that has on the organization.
Completely agree. I mean, we see organizational toxicity has been out there forever. And, honestly, with that level of organizational toxicity, we see it. It creates fear. It creates the inability to innovate. And at the end of the day, we know that fear hides mistakes. That's where leadership is about turning things into growth. And while that organizational toxicity exists, and I've dealt with it for years, it's a question of what do we want to build. In my mind, at the end of the day, organizational capability, that is a direct function of the leader's behavior. Not strategy, not process, not optimization, not talent. It is the leader's behavior. And at the end of the day, competence without humility, it builds brittle systems.
Yeah. And even worse when it's incompetence without.
Right now, looking at the upper leadership levels, you have one individual, but that one individual operates through fear and intimidation. And when that one individual is not there, that whole system will be gone. It's not replicated by anyone else. It's not going to exist by anybody else. And there's a lot of folks, I think, have sold their souls. And we'll find that the long-term impact will be pretty nasty for them, their kids, their grandkids, and everything else, because there still is a society we have to live in.
Yep.
But I'm not talking politics, in just business. Yep. You want to go into work where your boss calls you a moron? Do you want to go into work where you're berated and treated in that way? Or do you want to go into work where you're empowered and driven? And that's really what we talk about in high performing teams is you're invested in the success. Going to work is as pleasurable as going home. You're working with people you care about, who care about you. That's why safety matters so much, because in that, now I can be myself and I can interact with others, as long as none of us are abusive. As a leader, I tell my teams very quickly, prima donnas are not allowed, and if anyone wants to be, they can try. I'll beat them, and then we'll put it away. And nobody has to be a prima donna from then on, because it's all about empowering, not silencing. And in that organizational toxicity you're describing, and the upper leadership we see today, they very publicly acknowledge that they want silence. They don't want transparency. They want to keep it in the dark. And honestly, the most immature, the most arrogant, the most incompetent people love operating that way, because then the world doesn't see who they are. But around here, we check our egos and titles at the door, and we rip apart ideas, not people. And that's where the power comes.
I love it. I think that's well said. I couldn't agree more. I think this has been I think we could go on for hours. But I think this has been I think this has been a fantastic conversation. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you, more about Seward Community College, and more about your book, Awakening Leadership?
Sure. Book is up on Amazon.com, Awakening Leadership, but also my website, markbojeun.com. Or find me out on LinkedIn at Mark Bojeun. Thankfully, my name is unique, pretty easy to find out there. Don't hide much in the woods. Seward County Community College is located in Southwest Kansas. Is a fantastic place, surrounded by some amazing people. And speaking of that, the quality of life here, so much higher than any place I lived on the East Coast. People are just nice, and it is a valuable resource. So it's a great place to be.
That's fantastic. Mark, thanks again for coming on. Until next time.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.